So welcome to today's workshop on resident family partner engagement, from tokenism to meaningful engagement. This workshop was given previously on November 18th at the SCPOR showcase with SHA and SCHF. So we're very happy to be able to record our presentation and share it with you online at the request of some participants and others who couldn't attend the session. Katie.
We would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to affirm our status as treaty people, acknowledge the shared history of Indigenous and settler peoples, and begin the process of building healthy relationships between nations.
So we'd like to thank our funders, SCHF and SCPOR, for making our research a reality and for further supporting the work in long-term care. So this is the overview of the workshop today. What we're looking at is understand how patient partners can be integrated into research teams, understand how patient partners can be engaged in identifying priorities, selecting outcomes, interpreting data, and integrating knowledge into practice. We're going to look at understanding the steps that can be taken to maximize the role of relationships in patient-oriented research. And using the SCPOR Portlet tool, we are hopefully going to help build capacity within your team by sharing our experiences. And we're also going to look at and understand the complexity, which includes the costs and benefits of engaging in patient-oriented research. So when we look at our research team in patient-oriented research, and our research is embedded in 6 long-term care homes in Saskatchewan. And from these long-term care homes, we have been looking at what happens when a resident becomes unwell and how they are cared for within the long-term care home or transferred to acute care. We're really interested in changing the way care unfolds in long-term care homes in Saskatchewan, and really want to look at that inclusivity and quality of life as being critical components. And they certainly have guided our discussion throughout the research. The focus of the research is to inform the development of a model of care that will support older adults to receive their care in the right place, at the right time, by the right person, and aligns their goals of care. So when we looked at forming our team, we looked at a number of areas and invited people to come to an open house discussion to find out what it was that we really wanted to research. What was the question? How would we do the research? And with who would we do the research with? Patient-oriented research approach was always foremost in our minds when forming the team and inviting people to join the team. We had lots of conversations over coffee and with potential family partners that were recommended to the research team, or were invited by members of the team, or were referred to us by other people in the community who thought they would be a great asset to our team. What we found over time is that continuing to build relationships is really critical to the success of our research team, and also to the success of making a difference in persons' lives living in long-term care in relation to their quality of life and to the care that they receive, and also the way they are cared with by their partners in long-term care. Next slide, Katie. This is our research team. As you can see, it's quite extensive. The exciting part of the team is that Marilyn Barlow joined us as a family partner, and when we actually got funding, she joined us as a research assistant, which she will talk about and share her experiences later. We also have an opportunity for a PhD student, Kitty, to join us as a research assistant, who brings a lot of skill in relation to analyzing data and a different perspective of what it means to grow older. The other investigators from our team come from a office with Dr. Vera Keane and also with Saskatchewan. And we also have a number of family resident partners within our team who may be with us for a short time or a long time, really dependent on their personal lives and also their health and other activities that they're engaged with. And this is a really important piece around when you're building a team for patient-oriented research, is that it's often fluid, and we need to keep that in mind when we're working with resident family partners, is that they too have lives, and that these lives are very significant and do influence the work that they are able to contribute, but also influences the stories that they tell that influence our research work. We very much focus on members of the team participating at a level that they are comfortable with. And we often talk about that when activities come up in the research. So if they're interested in collecting data, or if they're interested in looking at the data analysis, they may be interested in doing some advocacy work and connecting with the homes. So it's very dependent what the person who joins our team, the experiences they come with, the skills they come with, and also what they would like to share with the team. There's often an assumption within the teams of labeling people's roles. And within our team, except for the grant process, we try not to label people and their roles. We try to allow them to be as fluid as possible. So sometimes people may wear the hat of a knowledge user or a decision maker, a researcher, family partner, and sometimes those roles become interchangeable. We view the entire team as researchers. We all have skills and knowledge critical to the work we do. We may meet for coffee and discuss the research in areas of concern or needing further information from personal experiences, and this helps us inform the work that we do. So it may not just occur in a formal way. We also may meet informally, one-on-one, or in small groups to share information and to grow our research. We also have collaborators within our team, and they may include people who are interested in the topic of our research, healthcare providers, the Saskatchewan Long-Term Care Advisory Council, Saskatchewan Health Authority staff, researchers nationally and internationally. And we're always very grateful for their commitment to the study and for sharing their invaluable knowledge and experiences, because this really helps enrich our study and to move our research forward. It also means that our end product will be more applicable to the population, to long-term care residents and staff and family members, because it came from them and we're taking it back to them. Next slide, Katie. A sustainable patient-oriented research approach within our team, it's really important to pay attention to the level of engagement, and we use the Paulet team to go. And so our team now will walk you through the Paulet using their own as examples. What our team has found, if we wander away from the far right columns, the 4 and 5, if we wander away from these columns, we often fail to meaningfully engage our team members. So Marlene's going to now share her experiences around partners. Thanks, Marlene.
Patients are partners. The first criteria of patient-oriented research is that patients are partners. The lowest aspect of involving patients as partners is that they are team members that are only informed about the research. They may be interested or even intrigued, but they have no access to be part of the research. When a patient member is consulted about the project, they are given access to have a voice in the project. When patient members are invited to be involved in the project, it sparks a hope that they have value that could be appreciated. When patient members become active members that collaborate with the rest of the team, they start to realize that their voice is important and their opinion counts. But when patient partners are empowered to influence the project, the relationship is truly maximized. Using myself as an example, when I became involved with this team, our project was already underway. I started as a data collector. As I interviewed participants, there were different reactions to my questions. I could sense the more articulate participants become more invested as they felt someone wanted to hear their thoughts and stories. When I would talk to family members who spoke for their loved ones who couldn't speak for themselves, I heard people who had so much to say about quality of life or lack thereof. People want to be heard and want to make a difference. I was offered the chance to be a resident partner on the team. I felt that hope and that realization that my voice could be part of something larger. My experiences with my family members in long-term care could add another dimension to the research. If every participant, patient or resident or family member feels valued, included, invited to collaborate, and empowered as a partner, the quality of the project will be enhanced and meaningful.
Resident and family partners were part of the research team from the outset and assisted in the development of the whole research plan. They helped identify the research priorities and established what the desired outcomes were for the project. Very early on, the patient and resident partners voiced their view that part of the research process needed to focus on the quality of life experienced by residents and their families in long-term care. This identification of what mattered most to the residents and their families influenced both the research priorities and the tools used to collect this type of data.
Research outcomes are the summations of results, or generally, they're what you do with the findings of a study. All team members sign on to a patient-oriented research project in hopes of making meaningful change or improvement, and this drives all parts of the research process, including choosing the outcomes to target. Our team is very mindful that each member may have a different need in terms of research outcome, and we try to work together collaboratively to ensure that these needs are met. For example, as a faculty member, it is important for my job to contribute to the body of literature through peer-reviewed publications. When you look at the continuum on the PORLIT, I would rate our team as a level 4 striving for level 5. We collaborate to identify research outcomes. This starts in a general sense at the beginning when we gather to write the research proposal for funding, and it continues more specifically as our project moves forward through data collection and continually evolves. We try to be responsive to opportunities to make impactful research outcomes as they arise. For example, this wasn't initially planned or forecasted as an outcome, but the opportunity knocked, and on June 25th of this year, Roslyn and Marilyn were invited to give a virtual presentation called Courageous Conversation on Ageism that was hosted by the Saskatchewan Commission for Human Rights. Staying open to unanticipated outcomes is an important part of patient-oriented research, and it can be really significant for the team. Also, our team aims to produce integrated outcomes. That is, we try to actively mobilize research findings to produce meaningful change immediately. One example was an improvement in a long-term care process that Marilyn discovered during an interview with a resident. This was communicated back to the home for immediate improvement rather than waiting until the research was finished and a final report or presentation or paper was written. Our team also values communication of our research outcomes outside of traditional research venues. We engage with communities and contribute reports and findings to community newsletters in rural areas and with agencies aligned with our research, such as the Saskatoon Council on Aging. Some key strategies that we've found helpful for ensuring collaboration to identify research outcomes are to build and foster the trust relationships and work to shift the power in the research team. Have regular open communication about the outcomes that each member wants to be involved in and what the member wants to contribute. We schedule regular debriefings, either one-on-one or in smaller groups with our patient family advisors to help develop confidence and reduce the stress of speaking and presenting viewpoints at the table of the larger research team meeting. We acknowledge all contributions. We actively encourage respectful disagreement. This is really important. You don't want to create an echo chamber. We work through analysis or interpretation of our results together whenever possible. We try to stay open to different types of outcomes than anticipated at the outset, and we really work to celebrate the outcomes that we achieve. Each is the result of a lot of hard work and helps to motivate continued commitment to the research project. I'll now turn it over to Katie and Marilyn.
When we talk about interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary teams, we often talk about having members from different academic program areas. And of course, this is important. Marilyn and I want to richen this conversation by including our own experiences. I'm a PhD student in psychology and a research assistant on Dr. Compton's team. I benefit immeasurably from being part of this research team. Patient-oriented research continually teaches me the skills I need to be a good relational researcher, such as how to navigate differing opinions and build consensus, or at least acceptance, among team members. In order to engage trainees on your patient-oriented research team, there are things that need to be considered. One of the big ones is time. Doing meaningful patient-oriented research takes time. Time to build relationships, time to work through challenges, time to help people who are less familiar with research gain the understanding, skills, and confidence they need to meaningfully contribute to the research project. The need for additional time is complicated for trainees who often have very tight timelines for their master's, doctoral, or postdoctoral work. One way of getting around this is to bring trainees into an existing research team and have them take on part of the project. Another option is to do as Dr. Compton has done with me and engage trainees separate from their program-related research. My takeaway message is that it is possible and valuable to do patient-oriented research as a trainee, and trainees can bring skills to a patient-oriented research project. So it's worth making the effort, both as trainees and as members of patient-oriented research teams, to get trainees involved. Now I'll turn the floor to Marilyn, our family partner research assistant.
Thank you, Katie. Your experience in research design and data analysis and your technical skills have benefited this project in so many ways. My role in this research project began as a patient and family advisor. I was introduced to Roslyn and had the opportunity to become part of a project aimed at improving the quality of life for older adults living in long-term care. It was a huge opportunity to learn. I was offered modules 1 and 2 through SCPOR and then became part of a team designing the research project. We all come from different perspectives and bring different points of view to the table. As we age, we want the very best for ourselves, as well as the older adults in our lives. I am part of the baby boomer generation that may overwhelm the long-term care system as we age. My mom is an independent senior living in her own home with support from her children. We never know what the future might bring. I was offered many opportunities to learn, and as the project moved forward each step, the patient and family advisors were part of the process. We felt valued and our opinions mattered. After receiving funding for the project, I was offered a position as a patient and family advisor, research assistant. Nobody knew what that entailed, but as the project progressed, the opportunities to learn continued. The resources available and the support needed to proceed were always there. I was part of the planning for the launch event and the creation of the poster we would use for recruitment of participants, as well as a presentation at a conference. Next was to engage and teach all of the team on the survey tool we would be using. Between ethics and privacy courses, we were busy. More than once, I left a meeting wondering why I had gotten myself into, but questions were answered and opportunities for learning were presented. As the project proceeded in the 6 long-term care homes, we are fortunate to be able to speak with so many residents and families while doing the quality of life survey tool. It was so important to get the perspectives of the residents. Their opinions really do matter, and they were happy that we were asking. Families were engaged first of all for the needed consent, and then because they knew the resident the best. Even with a high cognitive score, families would say, "You can ask my parent, they can answer these questions." While going through the questionnaire with the residents, it became clear that physical needs were often met. It was the ability to make your own decisions, finding purposeful activity, and having the feelings of being valued or needed, being asked for your opinion, and developing relationships that are just as important to quality of life. We are beginning to see some of the data that was collected, and we see common threads develop, and patient and family partners remain part of that process, providing input into how the findings will be presented. As the project continues, looking at processes when somebody becomes unwell, resident and family partners often bring solutions to what is a perceived problem. As team members, we all wear multiple hats, building on our strengths and learning from others. Thanks. Roslyn, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. So knowledge translation activities are driven by the diverse perspectives of the team members, stakeholders, and advisory teams, and are inclusive of the older adult population and their needs. I just want to go back to the formation of our team and to recognize that you may feel that there's male voice absent and the male caregivers are absent from our team. We did try to recruit them at the beginning, and we had lots of interest, however, not as members of the actual research team. They took up positions in the community advisory group or one-on-one conversations with me, and we still continue to engage a number of men in the study, however, just not as a researcher. I'm hoping they'll get recruited soon into that role. So when we look at the knowledge translation piece, we have looked at diverse ways of doing that. Marilyn talked about the public launch. We have the posters in the long-term care home. We've used the public newsletters, which focus on older adults. We've put newspaper articles in, posters at conferences, and some presentations. Throughout each step of the pilot, we are trying to integrate knowledge into practice through training, learning opportunities, conversations, engagement with researchers, family partners, family caregivers, and residents, staff, and stakeholders. Knowledge is always being shared and built upon. It doesn't only occur at the end of the study, and most often it's guided by the experience of the members of the team and those who we interact with. So, Katie?
So to begin, let's talk a little bit about nurturing a safe space for vulnerability. I see allowing space for vulnerability as a critical component to our team. One of the first things I realized when I joined this team was that who we are as people, beyond being researchers, mattered. This team is a research team, but we're also a collective of people who bring our lived experiences and identities with us. Who we are beyond being researchers, it's worth noting our whole team are researchers, is valid. On our team, we have LGBTQ people, neurodiverse people, a wide range of ages and lived experiences, and team members are welcome to share whatever of themselves they want to. The vulnerabilities that we share within our team contribute to the research we do in meaningful ways, and by sharing who we are, we can play to our strengths and cover for each other's weaknesses. By way of an example, I understand quantitative research methods and bring that knowledge to the team. However, I cannot edit a manuscript for grammar, because grammar is definitely not my strong suit. The level of vulnerability is going to vary from person to person, and it will certainly vary from team to team, but allowing for it has undoubtedly contributed to our team's strength.
And I think that strength is foregrounded in the relationships within our team. And sometimes we really need to set aside our research work and focus on the person. For example, when a mother of a team member experienced a fall and was taken to hospital, our team member felt she was being listened to and no one was attending to her mother or who she was before the fall when she was in acute care. The care was seen to be ageist, and unfortunately her mother quickly declined while awaiting surgery that was cancelled consecutively over several days. We had met that day to do some training on using the tools, but before we could even begin, we really needed to sit back and listen to the story that our team member needed to tell. By taking the time to actively listen to our team member and her story of experience, we were able to collectively provide next steps of action for her. That evening, a team member made the suggested phone calls, and her mother was in the operating room at 7:30 a.m. the next morning. The sharing of experiences empowers our team and builds deep and meaningful relationships that go beyond the research. However, these experiences inform the work we do and make our research and knowledge translation activities so much more meaningful for older adults, their caregivers, the staff caring in long-term care, and also for members of our research team.
Building off of Roslyn's comments, One thing that has distinguished this team for me is the willingness to engage people's experiences beyond the research context. There are many examples of this, but the one that's mine to tell comes from March 2020. I found myself in a situation where I had to balance a differing set of competing priorities, as I ended up living with my parents for the first 6 months of the pandemic. When I first ended up at home, I was overwhelmed by the need to be a reasonable child to my parents, while also balancing university and the general upheaval that was going on in my world. Because our research team is so relational, I was comfortable with asking to step back from the work I was doing on this project for a couple of weeks to regain some balance, and it made that time much more manageable for me. Our research team is particularly relational, but any team involving diverse stakeholders, such as patient-oriented research teams are going to, can benefit from considering relationships. Let's talk a little bit about embracing uncertainty. From my standpoint as a trainee researcher, this is without a doubt the most significant challenge to me in working on a patient-oriented research team. The thing about patient-oriented research is that because of the diversity of stakeholders, where a research project starts and where it ends up are very likely to be two different things. We have several examples of this from our research project. Sometimes the need to modify your research project hits you over the head. It did that for us when a family member of a study participant reached out to us and said, "What about those of us whose family member died in long-term care during the study? Are you going to talk to us and hear our stories?" It was clear that we needed to include this element in our research project. The lab that I'm a part of in Psych is interested in bereavement experiences, and as such, we chose to take on that piece of the project. If you were at Showcase, you may have checked out the poster that our lab put together. Sometimes the need to change course might be a whole lot more subtle than it was in this case. For example, a team member might make a comment at a research team meeting that leads to a new project idea or the revising of an existing idea. Being open to these changes, while challenging, makes the result more relevant for the people whose lived experience shapes the research and to knowledge users.
So from Katie's stories and from the stories that we've shared today, where you begin and end really doesn't matter. What matters is the difference you make along the way, which I find is the really great piece about patient-oriented research. As you learn more and live alongside the stories of experience of each team member and those that you hear during the research process, your research will grow and evolve. This can certainly be daunting at times, as we have found as a team. Sometimes you feel very buried by all the possibilities, and can also add many layers to your work. However, working out what needs to be done today and what can wait is an essential conversation for the research team. You need to stop, pause for a moment to listen and attend with the people's stories to understand their meaning and relevance to the work you are doing. So this presentation was originally delivered in a workshop at the 2020 Saskatchewan Health Research Showcase, and participants were encouraged to note questions they had in the chat box. And so what we thought we'd do here is share those questions and our response by team members. So the first question that we were asked was, what have you done and learned in order to continue your work through the pandemic? This has certainly been a challenge, as I'm sure most of you who are doing research have found it as a challenge. We've found that being open to new opportunities, and we've talked about a few of those today, is really key to being flexible, to thinking about how those new opportunities align with your research, and also what they can tell about the pandemic that may need to be captured now, because it may inform what happens in the future when we have pandemics. We often build on new networks for collaboration, so looking for other research teams that are in our area and connecting with them and finding out how they're doing their research during the pandemic and also about their research questions. We've certainly learned to get very comfortable with technology, particularly WebEx, and training family partners and researchers, academics, all alike on how to communicate through WebEx and other technologies. We've In our research, we're doing what we can. We've focused on a lot on building relationships and maintaining connection between our team members. And some of these conversations are not about research. Some of them are just about getting to know who the people are in our team better and about their experiences and how they're managing during the pandemic. We've also revisited our research questions to find innovative ways to collect data. And for those researching with vulnerable populations, as we are with long-term care residents, you're also probably experiencing difficulty connecting and collecting data. So we've looked at WebEx, recording conversations. We're starting to explore the opportunity of paid data collectors within long-term care homes. We're coming to terms with slowly the adjustment to our timeline, which is accepting that some things are going to be delayed or actually not completed. There has been times absolutely of lack of motivation. It is really hard sometimes to remain connected to your research when you're actually not making progress, when you can't connect with your participants, when you can't enter the long-term care homes, when you can't get together as a team and have a conversation in person, face to face. So it's really important to recognize this and allow team members time just to regroup, to step back, think about their commitment to their research, think about where they are in their lives, and think about how they're contributing and if they do want to contribute this time or if they would like to step away for some time. That flexibility again in your group is so important. We also gave ourselves permission to disconnect, and Katie talked about her disconnect, but also as a principal investigator, I too stepped away for a bit of time just to disconnect from the research world, pursue some other networks, relationships, thinking about research questions and what it really was that I wanted to achieve and what our team wanted to achieve was really important. So hopefully these are some ideas for your team to help you during the pandemic. Candace is now going to speak to the next question.
Oh, the darn mute. The question is, how do you manage power dynamics within the team, either perceived or real? And I think we have to start by saying managing power dynamics requires a commitment by all members to build a collaborative relationship that is based on trust within the team. With our team, team members are encouraged and supported to be honest with one another, to acknowledge the background and experience that each person brings to the team, and the value that each person's contributions makes to the success of the project. And that has been kind of the gold standard from the beginning of the project to where it is now. The team was formed on a relational model of building relationships over time, and members collaborate in sharing common goals and values. And I really have to say that power dynamics really have been minimal within our team and have not negatively impacted the team relationships and really reflect the strong trust that is fostered within the team. So just in concluding, I think I would say that we really see ourselves as a team, and we work effectively to try to ensure good team functioning.
The next question is, do you have tips for managing decision-making processes with such a large team? And first off, I would say the best advice for any kind of team that's going to navigate decision-making is to be thoughtful about it and try to make a plan at the outset. So essentially decide how you're going to decide. That's really important. Our team is relational, as you've heard from all of us, I think have mentioned that at some point during this presentation. So we've made our decisions in a relational format, making sure that there's representation of all voices when decisions are being made, making sure that people are up to date with the research and that we're working on the same end goals with a good understanding to inform the decision making, and then having that conversational approach where we all discuss, share our thoughts and why we are leaning a certain direction or why we're not, and then hopefully come to a consensus in terms of that decision. It's important to understand that you can't then come to the table with a predetermined, foregone conclusion in mind. You do have to stay open and have that relationship-guided conversation where everyone gives input and connects with the decision-making process. So I would recommend, again, plan how you're going to make the decisions ahead of making the decisions, and then have a different formats available. Maybe larger decisions have a vote, maybe smaller working groups can work through certain decisions. And if you're going to pursue a relational decision-making format, really build that trust and encourage full participation of the group.
The next question is about respectful disagreement. What steps do you take to encourage and facilitate this? And being an active listener, being attentive to the person that's presenting and speaking, who's sharing their story. It's a product of knowing you can say what it is on your mind and that you will not be ignored. And so that's a valued part of any meeting, and especially valued during these Zoom meetings where the speaker has the floor. And so being able to listen to that, their point of view is very important. Valuing the team members for where they are in their life and in their research, and accepting what they have to offer. Every situation is a learning opportunity, and new knowledge comes from diverse perspectives. Always keep that in the back of your mind. Thanks.
Our final question concerns this issue of time. I brought it up in relation to trainees, but I was asked if maybe we should consider it a little more broadly, because certainly, although trainees have specific timelines, so does everybody. So are there ways that we can deal with the fact that, in a sense, we have a system that isn't set up for research that takes an extended period of time, as patient-oriented research tends to do? So we started thinking about this, and one of the things that will help is to consider flexibility. So people can come and go from your research team, and that can be the case for pretty much anyone on the research team. You probably want to have a kind of core group of people who are fairly consistent, but you could certainly have people come and go as it works for them. They can be committed either for a short time or through the entire project. And you also just kind of have to accept the fact that the timeline is just, it's a guide. You try and stick to it, but when you don't beat yourself up over the fact that you didn't manage to stick to the timeline. And there's just sort of an acceptance that patient-oriented research is different from typical academic research. And so as a result, you just sort of have to recognize that that's part of what you've gotten yourself into, and that's okay. There's some great benefits to that. And recognizing that there's actually value in all these different forms of research. So maybe patient-oriented research and its extended timelines is not the best choice for you given what you're trying to know. And there's also opportunities for people to be involved at various levels. And sometimes that can help with time commitments, both sort of the longitudinal time commitment and the sort of intensive time commitment. we have an advisory team that consists of many people who are very, very dedicated to our research topic and the work we're doing, but they're unable to be active team members for a variety of reasons. So they act as an advisory team, and we engage them when we come across something that they would be particularly interested in, or they have particular experience with, and they feel that they're contributing to the research in a way that's valued and needed by the team, but they can do so without needing to make this crazy commitment that might seem overwhelming to them. And it's worth recognizing that that advisory role does not just have to be people like resident family partners, which is typically how that would be thought of. It can include other researchers who might be interested in learning about patient-oriented research, or who might be very interested in patient-oriented research, but by virtue of their own experience or the way that academia works for them, are not really able to be involved as an investigator on the team, so they can remain involved in a project anyway. So these are a few thoughts on how you might work around the issue of time and a system that isn't necessarily set up perfectly for patient-oriented research.
Certainly been an honor to be able to record this and to share our team's experience with you. And I'm very grateful for the team members who joined us today to share their experiences. If you'd like to have more information about our research on long-term care, quality of life, what happens when residents become unwell in that transition process, and looking at models of care, please feel free to contact myself or any member of our team. We'd be very happy to talk with you. If you'd like to talk about being a patient on a research team and joining a patient-oriented research team, you're very welcome to contact our family partners or SCPOR and talk to a member of their team about being a patient advocate. And I know Candace has a lot of knowledge in the areas of that, and Marilyn and Marlene can certainly share their experiences of how they got involved and what their roles look like. There's also a phone number there that you can phone. It will be answered by a person. We don't have an answering machine on that line. And Marilyn will gladly answer questions or refer you on to another team member. So please be patient with that process. If you do phone the number, that we will get back to you. And otherwise, I hope you have an opportunity to engage in patient-oriented research. It's the most meaningful work that I have done. And I think all work should include patient-oriented research at whatever level you are engaged in research. And I think all of us do patient-oriented research. We have participants that we work with. We have community informers that join us and help us imagine research question. We work with staff in clinical settings and healthcare. These are your patient partners in your research. It's just that we don't define them that way in most research teams. So do step back a bit and think about, how are you engaging the people that you are researching, and who owns the research, and how do you return the research to the people that it is most meaningful to? So thank you.